Baby seven is a boy. Congratulations. Coming from Australia. Haley, welcome. And you're the midwife. I saw your question in there, so that's so wonderful. Um, yeah, midwives seeing everyone that first 6 weeks is so key. Victoria, you're taking on postpartum clients this year. Wonderful. That's so great. Yeah, Kate, hot is hot no matter how you slice it for sure. Okay, let's see. I think that's everyone in. Maybe we'll go ahead and get started. Okay. Yay, yay. This is great. Okay, so this is going to be a live planning session. So I hope everyone brought a notebook. I'm going to be just going through. I took a few notes and I figured we'll kind of whiteboard together and go through everything. And then I have everyone's questions too. So we'll talk through all of those things, especially if there's anything that I don't get to in the notes. So let's see. Here we go. Yeah, I might need to move some of these things. Okay. Wonderful. So I called this class Sleep Like a Mother because sleep is one of the things that just gets so shaken up when it comes to postpartum. And so I thought the sleep aspect is one of the things that shifted the most for me from my earlier postpartums to my later postpartums. So that sleep mindset piece, I know a lot of you have taken my circadian polyphasic sleep training for parents. And if not, that is inside of the Substack membership, or you can get it on my website. So that is definitely something that is there for you. We will talk a little bit about the basics of it today, but in that class, we did a lot more of it. And this class, I kind of wanted to follow up a little bit more with some of the things with regard to the summer versus winter, because that was something that I kind of touched on there, but I thought we could do a little bit more of the practical details. So, this is a postpartum live planning session. We're always going to be trying to promote good things and curb evil things. That's kind of dramatic, but what I really mean is we need to um, accept like there are things that are in our control, things that are out of our control. There are forces that are going to make postpartum go better. There are things that can really make postpartum go worse. So maybe instead of good and evil, I was talking about like here we have our allies. So our allies and our enemies. And so we want to promote and bring in our postpartum allies as much as possible and keep the enemies out of our postpartum space as much as possible. So these are all different kinds of things that we can think about incorporating into our postpartum routines. And we have to be kind of fierce as mothers. And I can't say that it's always just all sunshine and roses and beauty and harmony. And we have all of those things, but there also are all kinds of difficult, dark things that we can face in this time. And that's why we're all here preparing to try to do as much as we can to have a good time, a better time. So thank you all for being here. And I hope this is super helpful. There will be kind of a circadian quantum spin here and some of the things that are just the normal, every, kind of postpartum things that you might hear in other places too. So, postpartum planning. The more babies that I have had, some of you here have had more babies than me. I've had 5 babies, but every single time I spend more and more effort on the postpartum part of things because this is something I've noticed for myself and for other people that when postpartum doesn't go well, someone could have the most beautiful, smooth birth experience ever. But then if these things creep in her postpartum, I call them our enemies. These are the things that we really want to avoid. Um, Here. These are the big challenges that I see. Loneliness is a huge one. So everyone has slightly different social needs, but generally women aren't meant to be left alone during the postpartum. Um, Likewise, poverty. We're not meant to be poor. We're meant to be rich. we're meant to have an abundance around us. And so if a woman is going into postpartum and you're feeling lack, that is going to make everything else more difficult. So, um, whatever we can do to, either get husband's work situation improving, get community support donations, get government supported if needed, like whatever you can do to increase the amount of wealth and abundance surrounding you, that is going to improve your postpartum experience. Damp cold is a really, really big one that can just seep in and slowly suck the energy out all around the world. We'll talk about, of course, all of the allies here are kind of the antidotes to these things. Likewise, suffocating humidity. We'll hear so much about how much important it is to have warmth in the environment. There's we see boom belly binding, we see warm foods, all of that kind of thing. But there have actually been cases where, um, mamas were so in this warm environment, especially in these hot climates, where they actually have babies have had heat stroke from, trying to overdo it on the heat. So it's not like, too much heat, obviously. Bright artificial light. This is one super disruptive to circadian rhythms, really rises cortisol. Cortisol flows directly into the milk. So the super bright artificial light, especially at the wrong time of day, increases mom's cortisol. She's feeling more stress, increases the cortisol in the milk. So then baby's feeling more stress. It's harder as a whole in a situation where there's a ton of cortisol flowing. So the bright artificial light's a really big one. Constipating foods or overly processed foods are going to be really challenging for lack of, not having the nutrition and then also not having the digestive movement because we're going to be doing what I'm talking about here is going to be like the lion, the postpartum lion, which ideally is 40 days. Or ideally is until however long that lochia is flowing, that bleeding that's flowing. So overexertion is another really big one. And this overexertion piece is a big one for moms of many. And I know that we have several of those in the class here today. And it is really difficult to slow down. We're not used to it. And also, there are a lot of demands on us. So it's really easy to end up getting up too early, doing too much. And you'll notice it when you get up and start moving about and all of that. And then your lochia starts flowing a ton more. Whereas if you just stay in bed, it's so much easier for your womb to come up, go back into its normal shape, all of that. So a lot of the strategies that we talk about in terms of what we want to bring in, um, the, these are the allies we're going to bring in here. These other things are all going to kind of help to protect. Like I said, we are going to promote the good and we're going to curb the other detrimental forces here. So we have okay, what are we bringing in? So let me know. I hope this is all big enough for you guys to see. I wonder if I could make this bigger. Let me know if you guys can't read. Oops, that's too much. Let me know if you guys can't read all of this. This is kind of a new way that I'm trying to do this because I was a little bit short on time, so I didn't make slides, but the information is all super valuable. Really good. One of the ways that I have done my postpartum, one of the other things that you can do that I'd love for you to mark down as your homework after this class is find a picture that represents the postpartum experience you want to have. Like the picture that I chose for the event that you registered for, if you zoom in on that, and I can attach it to the class afterwards, that was the one I chose for my fourth postpartum, because this was when I really decided to make postpartum a really big part of my motherhood experience. So the first three babies, I really was so focused on the birth and what was happening at the birth and who was going to be at the birth and how was it all going to go. And then, like I said, a really good birth can get totally wrecked by a really terrible postpartum. And likewise, I've seen conversely what was a really, difficult, call it traumatic, whatever you want, birth, that then the mother is really treated well during the postpartum and it can just soothe and heal all of that. So the same trauma, the same past trauma, can lead to wildly different results in different people. And a lot of it has to do with resilience. So, a lot of these things that we're looking at in terms of bringing in a healthy, happy postpartum are to bring in the wonderful factors of resilience. So, warmth is a really big one. Warmth, we've seen infrared light. You might have seen like red light therapy is something that now there are like panels and things. They're even starting to do trials bringing in red light therapy in labor and finding that it's really good for labor. They're not testing it on babies yet too much that I can see, but they are using it in postpartum on the breasts and finding that that actually increases supply, is more effective than creams for discomfort with the nipples, and that moms who are getting red light therapy on their breasts are their babies actually growing faster than the babies who are in the trial who weren't getting the red light therapy. And warmth is just one of the most traditional postpartum tools. So, sunlight and fire and candles and right, there's so many different warmths. A warm water bottle. Those are all really nice things to have on hand. I don't recommend the electric heating pads for bringing in the electric current into the bed, but a warm water bottle, like an old traditional one with where you actually fill it up with water, that is a wonderful ally for the postpartum. To bring it in, keep you warm, introduce that infrared, and that all is going to help at the cellular level. So mitochondria. They're fed by infrared. They actually absorb that infrared light and it can go into, and it makes them everything work better inside of the mitochondria, which remember, that's where your cellular energy is made. And that's also where cellular melatonin is made. So also hormones, tons of the hormones. So you know how it's a great big shift, and mitochondria are actually responsible for a lot of the processes of making new hormones. So warmth, really, really good. Some other things there would be like warm broth, warm soup, right? Eating things that are warm. So you might have seen traditional or like people who do postpartum cooking telling people not to eat cold foods. Don't eat cold foods. Don't eat raw foods, right? Eat warm, warm, warm. And part of that is because it is just, we can see it when you've seen mom after mom after mom. You just start to see these patterns. And so warm is really, really a big friend. Next will be the routines. And we usually think of routines in terms of like, days. Like we have our weekday routines and our weekend routines and all of that. And those all tend to break down in postpartum. So that's where it's really great with the micro routine. So thinking about tiny little repeatable cycles, right? You end up having a breastfeeding routine, a diaper changing routine. As your baby grows, you start to have more and more routines that you do with the baby that you're doing over and over. And if you do it the same way, then it really can help to establish rhythm and make things feel less overwhelming. So you're not having to make little tiny, just like tiny decisions all the time and using up your brain power for that. Instead, you have little repeatable cycles. So what are some of the things that we might want a routine for? Breastfeeding, warm oil massage. You might have a routine for that. It's a really helpful thing. I think that's listed a little bit deeper down here. Yeah, warm oil massage by self or other. This is a lovely little routine in the postpartum that again introduces that heat and is going to be gentle and nice for the baby. And it's something I find really helped me to settle in, especially once it got to the part where I was starting to feel antsy in my postpartums, warm oil massage. So I personally love sesame oil. It's nothing fancy, just some nice sesame oil. Sometimes I'll get black sesame oil. Cold pressed is like the fanciest, but even just regular cold pressed sesame oil, any kind, it just comes in really easy. It smells nice. There's no fragrance to worry about. It's great and totally safe for baby. It's right food grade. Um, and that is something that has really made a huge difference. So you just want kind of warm, big circles around on you and baby all across your body. You can do it once you're bathing right before the shower, or if you're not bathing in between. And it also just helps you to feel clean and nice. There are eating routines, meal routines, right? So it's really nice to start the day the same way. A lot of moms, maybe these days, I hear a lot of moms are drinking, um, still drinking coffee through their pregnancies. It used to be really discouraged. And now a lot of people, it's like, oh, well, it's not that dangerous. However, I still find it helpful, especially in the postpartum, to get something that is directly nourishing and then isn't going to deplete minerals or hydration while establishing breast milk supply. So, some warm spiced milk, you can find tons of recipes for that. Warm spiced porridge, warm broth. If you have that as your first and last meal of the day, it really goes a long way towards establishing your level of hydration and keeping your bowels moving. Remember up here, um, I share the constipating foods or overly processed foods, super refined sugar also. They will just kind of take away from your nutrient load, and that is going to make it more difficult to meet the needs. So, are you heating the oil? Victoria asked. I just warm it up in my hands. So, I have a nice little bottle with a little flip top, and then I put it into my hands and warm it up, and then just start rubbing it on my body. And I also find it doesn't make me break out. I've tried olive oil and coconut oil, and both of those didn't agree with my skin. And I ended up, they smelled rancid. The coconut oil always smelled rancid after it got hot, so I didn't like that. Some other people have said they really like that, but it never worked for me. So you can experiment and find what does work well for you. I've just found for my skin type, the sesame oil works really good and doesn't make me break out, and my babies have responded really well to it as well to it too. Um, yeah, so meal routines and then easy to chew and swallow warm foods across the day. So we call these sometimes around here in my local circle. I'm not sure if this is just an Oregon thing, but we'll say the soupy gloopies. We want the soupy, oops, glories, gloopies. Soupy gloopies. And this is especially like while you're lying in, which I recommend spending most of your time resting and horizontal and eventually getting up to sitting and then eventually up and walking around as your lochia is drying up. You kind of are slowly spending more and more time out and about, but that soupy gloopy stage is especially when you are spending most of the time in bed because while we're up and walking, a lot of that is usually helping our digestive system to have motility. So we have reduced motility when we are lying in bed. And this is part of why the um, warm oil massage is so helpful also for getting the lymph moving all around in the body. I can share in the show notes. BirthFit has a postpartum I highly recommend. I'll put the link in the notes for this class afterwards too. She has a wonderful program. Lindsay was one of my students at the Institute of Applied Quantum Biology, so she is a certified in applied quantum biology. So she is incorporating sunlight and hydration and all of that stuff into her programs, as well as the fitness and movement piece. But it's really important to have the right balance of are you resting enough so that your organs, your pelvic floor, and everything and is able to rest while also not getting stagnant and sluggish and feeling kind of like toxic and icky from things not moving well. So a balanced postpartum lie-in. So they're just different ways of kind of waking up and moving lymph around that's really, really nice there. I liked now to have a futon, a floor futon in my living room to sleep in and hang out. Because one of the things now that I have so many children, it's nice to be a part of everything, and have found that the rest of the household stays way more regulated when I'm more present with them compared with if I'm away during the postpartum. I've had a couple postpartums now with having three or not and four with the most recent older children. So with my fourth, I kind of stayed up out of the space and let them all handle it. With my fifth, I was on the floor futon, and it just felt so much smoother to be able to still give direction and a lot more of that co-regulation and not feeling like I was totally absent from the space. And that floor futon just gave us a great way. The other I know some of you in the class have asked specifically about how you manage the little baby with the toddler. And this was really, really great because then I could have the toddler and he had space and he felt like we were accessible and he got to meet the little baby, but then he could also do his co-playing and all of his active toddler stuff nearby. And that worked out really well for us. Um, Dim light. So this one is going to be a little bit different. We'll talk more about it in this summer versus winter section, right? Because, but with dim light for any postpartum, especially in when the sun's actually down, um, that is really important. So those of you who are more familiar with my work have, or just circadian rhythms in general, that a single flash of bright white light changes hormones. So this was something I did a podcast a while ago with Dr. Tara Hogan, and she was relating with one of her, I think it was one of her last babies. I think she's a mom of five too, or four or five or six. I don't know. She's one of those, has a bigger family, and everything had gone really smooth with all of her postpartums until her last baby had some significant feeding challenge, and she was actually um, having to get milk out of the fridge for that baby. And the new refrigerators have crazy bright lights. And so her sleep was super disrupted during that last one. And she was expressing how it felt more